bad news came from a Supreme Court judge yesterday throwing out a lawsuit that has been lodged against New York State, basically saying that the Constitution of New York is being broken because students in these cities, in these upstate cities, including the city of Utica, are not being given an adequate education, a basic education, because the funding is being withheld. The judge threw this case out. Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi says it is an insult to the children of the city of Utica. Good morning, Mr. Brindisi. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. This is not the news I think people expected on this one.
Well, it's not for people who were really following this case, who read through the transcripts, read through all the testimony, where you had the state's experts admitting under oath that if these districts had the funding they needed, then student performance in those districts would be better. So
right.
In any case like this, it's up to the jury, or in this case the judge, because it's a court of claims action. When you sue the state, you sue in the court of claims, and a judge decides. You listen to the facts of the case, and then you apply the law to the facts. And the facts, in my opinion, are clear that these students were not receiving the funding they needed. And number two, I don't think the law was really followed, because basically what she held was that these students did not have a constitutional right to a sound basic education, which is completely contrary to the Campaign for Fiscal Equity decision back in 2006, 2007, which said that students do have a constitutional right to a sound basic education. So
they went
hopefully
back,
it gets appealed, and we'll see where it goes.
She went back and used, this judge used numbers that were brought up during the Pataki administration, right?
Right.
And what did that say? Basically, what came out of how did she use that? I guess do you have any idea?
Well, the numbers are flawed to begin with. If you look at the current funding formula, it's based on census data from the year 2000. Utica was a completely different place then. Many cities were. And you're basing it on poverty numbers that are just outdated. And that's part of the argument that I've been making the last, I don't know how many years now, saying that you have to update this formula to reflect current trends. You know, recent immigrants to the city, recent poverty figures. You can't go on 10 and 20-year-old data because you're going to get a flawed formula.
Yeah.
But there's been no will in Albany to really fix the problem, so they had to turn to the courts, and it looks like the courts have failed us too.
So the next step would be the appellate division. Would you go to the appellate court for something like this?
Yes. So the court of claims is just like the Supreme Court. It's the lowest court in the state. It's the trial court. The plaintiffs have a decision to make whether they want to appeal it. Then it will go to the appellate division. I think it was in Albany, so most likely the third department in Albany. And then if that decision, depending on the outcome of that decision, that could be appealed to the highest court, which is the Court of Appeals, which is the one that made the decision back in 2006 or 7 on the Campaign for Fiscal Equity case.
Yeah.
And that led to the creation of the foundation formula, which now I claim needs to be updated.
Now, there's another lawsuit, too, with other school districts, smaller school districts around the state that have been that filed a lawsuit against the state for the same type of reasoning, and that is that kids are not getting that basic sound education that they're guaranteed according to the Constitution of New York State. Will that affect this lawsuit at all, do you feel?
I don't think it won't directly affect this lawsuit, but it may, a different outcome may force the legislature to act to reconcile the decisions. It may force the Court of Appeals, if it reaches that high, to act to reconcile different decisions from different departments. This one involved 8 school districts, Utica being one, Jamestown, Poughkeepsie, other small cities. There's other lawsuits involving New York City. I believe I just saw Albany and Syracuse filed lawsuits. Schenectady has a Department of Justice civil rights violation claim against the state. So, schools are really turning to the courts at this point in time. There's a big problem, in my opinion, when you walk into a classroom in the city of Utica, and you have 35 kids in a kindergarten class, one teacher, and half the class who can't speak English, and not enough teacher aides and support staff to really affect change. The studies are clear. When you have smaller class sizes and more resources, that will lead to better outcomes. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting, too. We've heard stories of teachers having to make copies of the textbooks, which, by the way, is a huge no-no. But they have no other choice because they can't get enough textbooks for all the students. I mean, just that alone comes down to basic dollars and cents, right?
It's dollars and cents. Every copy's to costs money. Anything to comply with Common Core requirements costs money. The printing costs in Utica alone, for the Common Core standards, I've heard numbers of $700,000-$800,000. It's astronomical, and if you don't have the funding to put those kinds of programs in place, how are the students expected to achieve? And when people, and I get so mad because there's politicians out there that say, well, we spend more on education than any other state.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. And number one reason we do that is because we actually value public education in New York State, unlike Mississippi and Alabama and some states that don't care about education. That's the first reason. But number two, it's not about how much money we're spending on it. It's about where the money is going. And the money is not going to the places that need it the most. That's the argument I always make. You can't have, it's not fair that a student in Westchester or wealthier districts in Finger Lakes have 18, 20 kids in a class. And they're already coming from privileged backgrounds. And then a kid in Utica who's coming from a very difficult background is stuck in a class of 35 kids. How do you expect that kid to learn and become a productive citizen?
Well, we're talking here about the basics, just the basics. I mean, you get down to Westchester County, and you'll see that, these kids have classes on drones. They have classes on robotics and all these things that kids up here will never get the opportunity for. And I always have believed, I understand their argument, and that is housing prices up there, their tax base is much larger. They can afford to do these things. And shouldn't they be able to for their kids if they'd like to? The problem is this is public education. I really think that should be an opportunity in Westchester. A student in Utica should have that same opportunity.
Well, yeah, the Constitution doesn't say you're entitled to a sound basic education if you live in Westchester County or if you live in Monroe County or wherever. It says you're entitled to a sound basic education wherever you live in the state of New York, and that's not happening.
Okay, I want to come back to one other thing, too, because we're going to hear this, and I hear this every time we talk about education, is, we're already a state that spends more than any other state in the union on education, and you can't throw money at this problem.
You can't throw money at the problem, but money going to the right programs, to hiring teachers, to lower class sizes is proven to work. If you look at studies done in New Jersey and other states that have had similar problems where they lowered class sizes, where they had more one-on-one support, academic intervention services, after-school programs, before-school programs, it proves that children who are living in poverty are going to perform better. And if you look at states that don't spend a lot on education, some of the states in the South, their student achievement scores are abysmal. They just don't perform to the same level as students in states where they value public education more. So it's not about, I'm not saying we have to raise taxes. I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's take the money. We already spend a lot in taxes. We send a lot of taxes to Albany every year. Don't we want that money to go to the schools that really need it the most? What are we paying for here?
Well,
or do we want to have these kids fall through the cracks and they end up on social services? They end up in the criminal justice system.
You're paying for
them
anyway.
They become everybody's burden.
Yeah, and let's talk about what the real problem is here. Downstate where the tax base is higher. Take Long Island, Westchester County, that area. They're basically saying we pay all this money in taxes. Why should we have to pay for those kids up there? They should pay for themselves. This is really a battle of many of these legislators don't want to see that money, any more money coming upstate because they feel they're already funding us completely as it is.
And I understand their argument, and I understand they have frustrations with things like the tax gap because they're limited on how much they can raise locally.
Right.
Let's look at those issues. If you want to spend more and raise taxes in your own area to pay for horseback riding and the other programs that you have in your district, by all means, go right ahead.
Okay.
But you should not be getting subsidized by the state of New York for these programs. You can afford to do it on your own. You look at Utica's the fifth poorest district in the whole state.
Keeping in mind that
as much. If you look at all 700 districts in the state, Utica's the fifth poorest.
Wow.
There's 200 more school districts ahead of Utica that get more per pupil aid from the state of New York. The wealthiest school district in the state of New York, down on Long Island, gets almost as much per pupil aid, around $10,000 per pupil, as Utica does. Why would the wealthy as a district get just as much as the fifth poorest district? So there's definitely something broken in the formula.
The formula is
and
messed
the people
up.
in the wealthier counties don't want to talk about it.
If you were to apply the same formula to social services, we all would be getting welfare benefits.
Exactly.
That's exactly what the way the school formula works. It doesn't make any sense.
Assemblyman,
it makes no sense.
I remember either this summer or this spring we had talked to Bruce Karam, and there was a change in the allocation of funding where Utica was actually going to get an increase. I want to say what I remember was about $200,000 maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was $2 million. But they were going to be able to hire back some teachers. Do you remember that? And have we kind of turned a corner here? Or at least are we heading in the right direction?
We are heading in the right direction. One of the things that we've been able to work together, when I got in office, I really have worked hard with other legislators from these smaller cities, and even some of the bigger cities like the Syracuse and Albany and Buffalo, which have similar challenges to a place like Utica and Rome. We really got together and we were able to tweak the formula a little bit to say that if you have increased population, if you have larger percentages of refugees and immigrants, then you're going to get more of an allocation of the state aid formula. So that's a good thing, and we have turned the corner. We got more money this year. They were able to hire back, I think, 40 teachers, but it doesn't make up for the 200 teachers they had to lay off in the last 8 years or whatever it's been. So
which means those class sizes
we're heading in the right direction.
Still high. Yeah.
Another downturn in the state economy is going to send a cut in state aid, and it's going to put Utica right back where it was.
All right. So would you expect, I know you don't know the answer to this, but I would expect them to appeal this.
I would expect them to. I've talked to the lawyers yesterday in the case. Obviously, every school district has to make its own decision whether they want to stay in the case and move on, but they feel that the judge's decision was really off base and that they feel that this is an appeal that's worthy taking.
All right, and maybe at the same time, the state can refund Utica for the legal fees it had to spend on defending that ridiculous lawsuit they had this past year.
Exactly.
That would be nice.
Another wasted pot of money that we could be putting towards classroom instruction.
All right, Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much.